everybody. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Andy. I hope you're doing really well wherever or whenever in the world that you are. Today we're going to be doing a mid-year check-in on my annual reading goals for 2024. I'd love to hear in the comments down below what reading goals you set for yourself, no matter how big or how small. I'd love to have a conversation about how our reading is progressing this year. Because I know for myself, there's been some highs, some lows, some inconsistencies, as is the case every year. And really, this is just for fun. So who really cares? Very low stakes here. I've got my notes up, ready to go. Let's not dilly-dally. Let's check in about the stats, the nitty-gritty data points of reading that everyone cares so much about. Well, I care a little bit, hence I made goals. So without further ado, let's begin. My first goal for this year was to read 100 books. And as of today of filming, I have read 100 books. I did it, yay! I intentionally set this goal of how many books I was gonna read pretty low for me. I know that 100 books is an astronomical amount of books and certainly not realistic for everybody. The only thing I'll say is that reading is a passion of mine. It's one of my favorite hobbies. It's something that I genuinely enjoy spending a lot of my free time doing. I don't watch a lot of TV, so this is kind of counter to that. However many books that you've read this year is beautiful and is just right. I love to read. And I listen to a lot of audiobooks, which is why I can read so much. But yeah, I have technically already accomplished this goal. My next reading goal was to read 6 nonfiction books. In years past, I had to read 12, and I just never accomplished that. So this feels like a much more reasonable goal for myself, considering I don't read a lot of nonfiction. And for me, I'm very flexible with this category. It can include informational texts, memoirs, essays, poetry collections, depending on the content. Like truly anything that feels nonfiction-y fits for me. As of today, I've technically read 4 nonfictions. I read Crazy Brave, which was a memoir. Loved it. I read Our Women on the Ground, which is a collection of essays. Also loved it. I read Are Prisons Obsolete? Found it very informative. It's definitely a must read if you're interested in prison reform or the prison industrial complex in the US. Very interesting. And then I read recently a poetry collection, Black Girl Call Home, which is very memoir-esque. So I counted it in this list. So that's pretty good. I feel very confident that I'll be able to read 6 nonfiction this year. I'm certainly on track. My next goal is to complete or catch up on 5 fantasy series from my tracker in my reading journal. And I'm doing okay with this. Of course, I've not really made that much progress in the series that were already on my list. I'll make sure from my reading journal that I put a picture up of my series tracker so that you can see what I mean. But I did find and completely catch up on the Mages of the Wheel series by J.D. Evans this year. I've read everything that's been published and I can't wait for the next book to eventually come out. Although no date has been released, even so I might have to be very patient. I've also caught up and read everything that's been published for the Legends of Fesmar series by Helen Schwerer. I don't know how to pronounce her name. I'm so sorry. That wasn't an original series on my radar, but I have since started and completed all that's been published. Editing Andy here. I have lied, grievously lied. I completely forgot that the 4th and final installment in this series was published June 20th. I have not read that new release, that finale quite yet. So I have to retract this statement. I have 1 fewer completed fantasy series than I even thought in this moment. Ugh. And that's it. I have certainly DNF'd a few series, but that's not the point of this goal. Here are some series though that I'm in the middle of and anticipate finishing / catching up. One being Stormlight Archive. I'm about, 15% into Words of Radiance, and I have been there for many moons. If you watched my July TBR, you'll know I've got to finish this book. I've got to. It has to be done in July. So I plan on catching up on that because the newest book in that series comes out later this year, although I don't actually know when. I think I'll finally finish the Throne of Glass series. I just have Kingdom of Ash to read. So hopefully I can read that. I'm also in the middle of the Gentleman Bastard series by Scott Lynch. I'd love to finish that. I'd love to start and or catch up with Malice. So like there's a few that are on my radar. It's just a matter of committing, you know? Sometimes I feel intimidated, even as somebody who reads a lot of fantasy. Committing to a series that's more than 3 books can be a bit daunting. So anyways, that's my status. I've caught up / completed 2 fantasy series. So I need to find 3 more to do that with. Preferably ones that like I've already started and are on this tracking page. My next goal is to read my physical TBR down to 0. I've done some book shopping this year, and so this has actually gone up since I think my initial video. I currently have 19 unread books on my physical TBR shelves. Some of them are long, like chunky fantasy books like Malice and what else is over there? Ship of Magic. But some of them are graphic novels or memoirs, so things that are a little bit shorter. So we'll see. We'll see how I do. My next goal is to get my Kindle TBR down to 0. And again, I've purchased some things since the beginning of the year. When I first started, I had 5 books on my Kindle list, and I've read 2 of these 5. I made some progress in that I read 2 of the original 5, but then I've since purchased 2 additional books. So yeah. This wasn't one of my goals, but it's just something I'm being mindful of. I also would love to read my audio TBR down to 0, and I currently have 21 unread audiobooks on my Audible. And it's hard because some of those I bought years ago where I don't know that I want to read them anymore. For example, I bought one of the Lucy Score books, and I don't think I'd care to read that. But, you know, you can't just return everything that you pick up on Audible. So I don't know what I'm going to do about that. It is what it is. I will keep trying to dwindle that down a bit. I need to read what I already own, you know? I mean, you know, right? My next goal is, of the authors that I pick up this year, for 50% of them to have some kind of diverse voice, some kind of demographic difference than myself. I think it's really important to read from authors who have different lived experiences than from myself. I just think it makes us more compassionate, empathetic, connected people. And so it's a priority for me in my reading. Currently, of the authors that I've picked at the day of filming, 50.8% of them are authors with some kind of diverse voice from myself, you know, whether they're a BIPOC author, LGBTQIA, neurodivergent, whether there's some intersectionality going on for that author. I mean, I'm very flexible, and I acknowledge that not all identities are visible, nor are they necessarily disclosed by authors. So this is not like a hard, fast, rigid rule. This is just something I'm genuinely trying to be thoughtful about as I'm considering new books, new series, new authors to pick up. So anyways, I'm feeling really good about this goal, this progress so far. Some of my 5-star favorite reads this year have been from diverse voiced authors, which I love. I think making that a priority for myself has only enriched my reading this year, and I love that. So anywho, thumbs up for progress on that goal. My next goal was to DNF at least 10 books. I think for me, I really have a tendency to be a bit of a completionist, and even if I'm miserable, I have this like weird internal pressure to finish things, even if I'm not enjoying them. So in my mind, DNFing is a form of self-care and can help prevent me feeling kind of slumpy, which I always dread. I mean, you know, slumps are inevitable, but I want to reduce the risk of those as best I can. And so for me, I wanted to be mindful of, if I'm not enjoying a book, to just put it down. So far this year, I have DNF'd 4 books. So yay me. My next goal was to read outside my comfort zone. Of the books that I pick up, almost, especially if I'm in a mood reader moment, they're almost always going to be fantasy romance, or literary fiction. Those are the genres I pick up the most. But I want to try and incorporate other genres into my reading because new experiences are fun. And I'm almost always really pleasantly surprised. Like, you know, for example, one of the categories here is historical fiction. I don't naturally gravitate towards historical fiction, and yet I've really enjoyed a lot of those books. Part of this is I want to honor the mood reader in me and pick up genres that I love, that feel comfortable, that bring me joy, that help me manage the stress in my life. And I want to push myself a little bit to pick up books that are new to me, are from genres that I don't typically gravitate towards, because again, I feel like it enriches my reading experience. So with that in mind, I was hoping this year to pick up 5 horror books, 5 mystery thrillers, 5 science fiction, and 5 historical fiction. So far, I've read 2 horrors. I read Our Wives Under the Sea at the very beginning of the year, and I read a short story called Mama Tulu, which is from an audio-only anthology. It was very good. And I did end up downloading the rest of that anthology collection. I just haven't picked it up yet. I'm sort of saving it for spooky season, but we shall see. So making some progress there. I read 4 mystery thriller books. I read Lock Every Door by Riley Sager. I read In the Market for Murder and A Quiet Life in the Country. This is part of the Lady Hardcastle Cozy Mystery Series by T.E. Kinsey. So I read those first 2 books. And then I read A Grave Robbery by Deanna Raybourn, which is the 9th book in the Veronica Speedwell Mystery Series. I've only read, actually I can change this. Since I took these notes, I've finished an additional book. I've read 2 science fiction so far. I read The Surviving Sky by Kritika Rao, and I read Cinder by Marissa Meyer. I'll of course have the picture up here. And finally, I have read 5 historical fiction, and I anticipate reading even more than that because of book clubs and other things. I read Salt Houses. I'm forgetting the author, but of course I'll put the book cover here. I read Where the Lost Wander by Amy Harmon. I read The Slow March of Light by Heather B. Moore. I read Shuggie Bain by Douglas Stewart. I read The Island of Sea Women by Lisa C. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep, 5. Great. So I'm making pretty good progress there. I've also this year picked up a ton of poetry thanks to my Reading Roulette TBR game, which is certainly outside my comfort zone. And I've also read quite a bit of fan fiction, which has been a pleasant surprise. The last goal that I had for myself this year was to read every day. Now, for me, this was more of an information gathering goal. I was curious to figure out how many days that I have read. And as of June 30th, the day that I'm filming this, I have read 143 out of 184 days. Let's see, what's that percentage, I wonder? So I have read just about 78% of the days so far this year. That's sort of a useless percentage or kind of a pointless data point, but I was just curious and it's been fun for me to track. It's very much in the spirit of, I love reading. It brings me so much joy. It's part of my self-care and I want to be mindful to do that as much as I can to make sure I am my best self for the people in my life, for my work, for the fun, all the things. So there you go. All my goals. I have quite a bit of goals. I think that's maybe 9 goals in total. It was fun making my goals at the beginning of the year. It's been fun to kind of check in and see how I've been doing. You know, some of these goals I've been thoughtful about throughout the whole year, or throughout the first half of this year, like reading nonfiction, reading outside my comfort zone, reading from diverse authors. And then some of these I'd kind of forgotten about. Like I sort of forgot about reading my physical TBR down because it's just like not been a priority. So it's always good to come back and do a little check-in to see how I might need to reorient any priorities or just things that I want to be intentional about moving forward. So there you go. As I mentioned at the beginning, I'd love to hear a little bit about your reading goals and kind of how you're doing with them. What are some of your priorities and goals moving forward for the rest of 2024? I hope you're doing really well. Happy reading, and I'll see you guys in the next video soon. Bye.